Welcome to the YourTown television program. This segment is brought to you by the MPS Foundation, and I'm your host, Jeff Kline. In this segment, we'd like to welcome Faculty Associate Lyla Englehorn to talk to us a little bit about Cruiser, the Consortium of Robotics Unmanned Systems Education and Research, and also a workshop, a unique workshop that's being held every year at the Naval Postgraduate School. Lyla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, you have been back. You were on one of our first shows to talk about the Cruiser, or Consortium for Unmanned Systems Education and Research, with Dr. Ray Bittner. And at that show, we promised that you'd be back to talk about a workshop that's going to occur in September. But before we get there, I'd like our audience to get to know a little bit about what faculty associates do at MPS.
Oh, sure.
So give us a little bit of your history about being a faculty associate at MPS.
All right. Well, as a faculty associate, I am lucky enough to do a lot of different things with a lot of different people, and it keeps the job very interesting.
Okay.
I started, as you know, as an intern. I was getting my master's with the Panetta Institute for Public Policy, and as part of my master's program, I was required to do an internship, and I decided to investigate government and the military. So that's something I never worked in before, and found it fascinating, completed my internship, and was lucky enough to be hired on to continue work at the Naval Postgraduate School. I started with the Maritime Defense and Security Research Program on the Maritime Information Sharing Task Force, looking at information sharing between the public and private sector entities in port environments throughout the U.S.
And that purpose was to share information to try to increase force protection against terrorism.
Yes, absolutely. And just looking at different information pathways and communication networks, trying to evaluate and analyze that in order to harvest best practices to put out to the rest of the community. Fascinating work. I learned a lot. And from there, I also started working on curriculum development, specifically for maritime security topics.
Sure, because at that research point, you start learning things and new things.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a great way to introduce stuff in graduate courses. Sure.
And that maritime security topic area is of international concern. And the curriculum is now being offered on campus in 2-week resident courses for international students sent to us for those maritime security courses.
That's correct. In fact, I know there's a group of Moroccans on
Right
campus
now.
right now
Yeah.
going through that course. So after that experience,
Once I got familiar with curriculum development, I assisted with curriculum development in operations research topics for a couple of different professors, and I was also brought on as a technical writer with the Consortium for Robotics and Unmanned Systems Education and Research.
so what does a technical writer do?
A technical writer, Cruiser gives seed money to good ideas. It's specifically looking at robotics and autonomy topics. And each year we needed to report back to our sponsor what we spent their money on. And it was a feedback report, gathering findings from the researchers, compiling those in a coherent way to report back to our sponsor. So again, I had an opportunity to learn a lot very quickly, and joined the Cruiser team on a more regular basis, and am now their associate director.
Great. In fact, that's where we're going to start up. But I wanted to give that background to show that our faculty associates really are integral into the education process and also the research process.
Absolutely.
And we could not, the great faculty that we have, our tenured faculty that studied for many years, could not do that mission without the benefit of the services that are provided to all our faculty associates. And your experience is not uncommon.
No,
you might
absolutely
start
not.
in one field, you work in another, but your input and contributions to our graduate education is extremely valuable. Well, you're now an associate director in the Consortium for Robotics, Unmanned Systems Education and Research, and I would like to do a little update of Cruiser and that larger community. So just how big is Cruiser now, and how many entities are belong to it? Give us a short description, and then we're going to show a video.
The Consortium for Robotics and Unmanned Systems Education and Research, or Cruiser, we have a website, cruiser.nps.edu.
Right.
You can see what we've been doing lately and what we've done. We have about 3,000 members, and those come from across the DoD, industry, academia. We have international members. We have members of the general public who are just interested in robotics and autonomy. About 45% of our membership is from industry, because DoD partners are very important in our research and development efforts.
Right, and the collaboration. So what I'd like to now is show about a 6-minute video. Tell us a little bit what's in this, and then we'll go to it.
Cruiser funds field experimentation quarterly, generally throughout the year, so 4 times. It's really important when you're developing new concepts to try it and see if it works.
Right.
You can write about it, you can think about it, you can research it, you can model it, but until you take it out in the field, you don't learn what you need to learn.
Exactly.
And we sponsored what we called the multi-thread experiment off San Clemente Island in November of 2017 to see if these systems would work together. It was the first effort really focusing on communications
between
and networking
unmanned systems.
Between unmanned systems in different domains.
Right.
Undersea, surface, air, and a infiltration team of
so there was humans
soldiers.
involved
yes,
as
there
well.
were humans involved as well, and how all of those systems work together.
Okay, well, let's go to that video and give a couple seconds here to bring it up.
And one of the fundamental things is that can we use unmanned systems to reduce the number of personnel that are required to go in and do a direct action mission at an objective. So in this case, what we're talking about is that through the phases, there's several different ones, typically with a military operation. It's insertion, infiltration, actions at the objective, exfil, and extraction. So in insertion, what we're talking about even before insertion is intelligence preparation of the battle space. So for the undersea domain, what that means is that we send in a couple of REMUS vehicles that are navigating relative to the ocean floor and collecting sonar information, forward-looking sonar, side-scan sonar, other oceanographic information. And that's used to determine where is the best position to bring the SEALs ashore. Once that's obtained, then that information is translated over to the SEALs that are on board an unmanned surface vehicle.
So CFOX is an unmanned boat, essentially. It's a fully autonomous robotic vehicle. For this experiment, they have become mobile wireless nodes on our mesh network, and they will be serving in the maritime domain to relay messages from underwater vehicles to aerial vehicles.
That unmanned surface vehicle is then deployed over to do over-the-beach horizon operations. That brings the SEALs ashore. While we're doing that, we have an overwatch, a communications link.
ScanEagle is a military UAS aircraft. It's an unmanned aerial system. For the experiment, it's a mobile aerial node in the multi-thread experiment for the testing of the network control system.
Now the SEALs are transitioning from an insertion to an infiltration. And now they're transiting up to the actions at the objective. So the ScanEagle and the CFOX are both acting as communications relays and also as sensor platforms to support their mission area. Now with the multiple ScanEagles, we can also have digital video transmitted to the SEALs as they're transiting to be able to let them know what's happening at the objective area. Also, in a future vision, they're allowed to control one or more of the ScanEagles from the ground. So the rest of the system, the networked control system, then adapts to make sure that it's got good communications and sensing capability back to their command and control, which in this case is an offshore ship. The other aspect is the outstanding job that the network folks have done in putting up the backbone network and also the aerial network. A lot of work went into that, and also the tools, and that's associated with the Synetics Lab at MPS.
The role of our team is to bring and implement expertise in putting together self-forming mesh networks to integrate unmanned systems, vessels, and dismounted operators into a seamless network infrastructure and to operate it. So based on that, we've established the backbone, fixed architecture across the island, helped to connect most of the unmanned assets.
I spent about 5 days on San Clemente Island and gained a lot of exposure to the unmanned assets that the Navy is currently implementing into its arsenal.
I wanted to participate in the multi-thread experiment because I wanted to be able to take the information that we're learning here at school and apply it in a real-world scenario.
And I found it very encouraging and enlightening to see where the Navy is headed, and it also provided a perfect case study for which I can frame my thesis in.
As an information professional, getting hands-on experience with cutting-edge technologies will help me in the future to employ those technologies when they come about to the Navy as a whole.
It's what the team has done has exceeded my expectations. I was concerned about the different vehicles and transitioning through the different phases. All of our principals in the different domains, the person that was the group from NEDU that was running the underwater vehicles, came up to speed very, very quickly and have done a great job. Likewise, the CFOX folks have done an awful lot of work, Dr. Sean Cragling specifically, and then the team from Scan Eagle have presented the opportunity to do better experimentation than I had originally anticipated.
The SECNAV-directed, ONR-funded Consortium for Robotics and Unmanned Systems Education and Research, or CRUISER, has been the primary sponsor of the MTX and underlying research efforts. The Office of the Secretary of Defense's Rapid Reaction Technology Office was the key sponsor of this initial MTX experiment. Among the many partners integral to the success of the current MTX effort are SPA War Systems Center Pacific, Commander, U.S. 3rd Fleet, Commander, Naval Surface Force Pacific, San Clemente Island Staff, FACSFAC, Southern California Offshore Range, and Navy Experimental Diving Unit. Thanks to all who supported this initial MTX effort, the team has learned enough to take the next step toward employing autonomy in the battle space to enhance mission performance.
Okay, well, that was sort of an update on CRUISER, the field experimentation program, and many of those ideas are actually started months in advance. You talked about seed funding for faculty so that they could develop their ideas, develop their unmanned systems ideas. And some of those ideas come from the innovation workshop that we hold each September.
Yes.
So what I'd like to now is move to and focus on that workshop and your role in it. So let's talk a little bit about that workshop, what it does, why it's unique, and what we employ and what we use the output for. And I'll remind you about any of those questions anyway through. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. The Warfare Innovation Continuum workshop we hold each September on the Naval Postgraduate School campus in Monterey. I generally bring together about 50 junior officers and early career engineers from academia and industry and other DoD labs, as well as fleet officers from other commands, to campus to work with our Naval Postgraduate School students. They're given a scenario, near future potential scenario based on current events, really, that we get from ongoing news items and things happen in the world. They are given a design challenge, and they use tools of design thinking on small facilitated concept generation teams to rapidly generate good ideas, things they wish they could have to employ, robotics and autonomy items, to help them in that future scenario.
So, but the young engineers that we bring in, early career engineers from industry and Navy labs, bring their own ideas as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I try to mix perspectives on each team, so we get a lot of good ideas in a small incubation kind of space. And sometimes it's the first time some of these junior officers have met some of the people that are working on the things they use daily in the field, and vice versa. Sometimes it's the first time these engineers have met officers who use the things that they're creating. So it's a really rich environment for that innovation.
So they get to know each other's professions as well as they start to discuss these items.
Most definitely.
So we give them the scenarios, we give them technologies, we give them missions. They get together and they talk about it. They think about what the risks, the opportunities are. And so what normally happens as an output of this 3-day workshop?
Rapid concept generation. And at the end of those 3 days, on the 4th morning, we asked each of the 5 or 6 teams to give us their best 3 or 4 ideas. Very rough prototypes, drawings. Often we get pictures of what they've drawn up on the board. And that's ample just to communicate those ideas to get it to the next step. And I should back up and say at the beginning, we give them a day of knowledge leveling briefs so they have an idea of what's in the realm of the possible, what's in development. So it's not completely unbounded thinking, it's actually tethered to what's happening, the emerging technologies that we have coming in the pipeline.
So there's research programs and people come and actually
Yes.
brief those.
Yes.
Now we've had some a lot of leadership attention to this. Is that right? So
Absolutely.
what kind of guests have arrived, or what kind of speakers have actually come and provided input?
Last year we were lucky enough to have Jamie Heineman, one of the Mythbusters of
okay.
Mythbuster fame, the Discovery Channel, come and talk about his experience with rapid prototyping and the innovation that comes from that. And really brought home the message of you learn by doing. You need to
Right.
take it out in the field and try it and see what happens. And you learn unexpected things, and it takes you to unexpected places. You may end up developing a technology you never intended at the start.
So now what do we do with all these ideas?
Good question. So we'll take some of these wild and crazy ideas. Some of them we've thought about before, they're in development. Some of them are not within the realm of current science
Right.
or way too expensive.
Right.
But some of them have a lot of potential. So our senior advisory team will look at all the ideas, down select to ideas or concepts of interest. We'll then put those out to our bigger cruiser technical community, those 3,000 members I talked about earlier, and say, okay, how might we actually prototype and test some of these ideas?
Right.
They will then propose to us prototyping and testing plans, and we'll down select some of those and give them some seed money and say, okay, try it. Go out, build it, test it. We have GIFIX field experimentation events down at Camp Roberts, which is
Like the one we just saw, right?
Exactly.
Right. Those
Yeah.
were ideas that came out from a previous concept generation.
Absolutely. And once those ideas are mature enough to get to that proof of concept phase,
Right.
they can then be proposed at a higher level of funding.
Well, we're going to talk about design thinking, obviously, in another show. And the reason why we're starting to run out of time.
All right, perfect.
But Lyla
Be happy to come
Englehorn,
back.
thank you very much for being our guest and talking about the Warfare Innovation Continuum and bringing up the workshop that's associated in September with Cruiser. And thank you for joining us on this segment of the Naval Postgraduate School sponsored, Foundation sponsored segment, where we bring you interesting faculty and students and the activities that they do around our community.